started. Good evening. My name is Joshua Meredith, and I'm really happy to join you here tonight. I want to welcome all of our students, administrators, panelists, and alumni here. Thank you for attending a better understanding of the law school process. I want to thank our panelists specifically for giving their time here to aid you in your journey. Before we jump into speaking to our panel, I want to give you a brief overview of the Shevak Labak Center for Career Strategy and Professional Development, our pre-law career development resources. We have launched over the course of the beginning of this semester something called CAPS, communities. They are connections and partnerships to make things stronger for our students. To learn more about our group for undergraduate students and graduate students in our law policy, government, and public sector, there is a link in the chat for everybody where you can go and learn more about us on our website, which is yu.edu/SGC. In addition to that, students, you can also access through our Canvas page, our community database and references for yourself as well. I do the advising for this group of students, so it's very nice to meet all of the students who are on here today. If we haven't met in person, I look forward to advising you at some point this year. Our advising is open through YU CareerLink, YUCL, and we're really excited to sort of help you in that as well. One piece of feedback we got from students was, how can we write a better personal statement? So we came up with a guide, which is now in the links available here in our chat to sort of help you with that as well. And it's always available through our Canvas page. We're here to aid you in your law school process along with our partners in academic advising. So I want to thank all of our academic advisors who were able to join us from both the Wilf and Barron campuses today. We can't do this without your partnership. So now that we've discussed a little bit about how the Shevak Labak Center can aid you in your journey, I do want to get started with our panel. And if you have questions about how we can help you here at the Shevak Labak Center, please feel free to reach out. I'll make sure that my email is in the chat. We are super available. Appointments are open, and we are excited to talk to you and help you get ready for law school. So let's do some quick introductions. Joining us from Brooklyn Law School admissions is Associate Director Elizabeth Madigan, Esquire, who's graduated from Williams College and attended our very own Benjamin N. Cardozo Law School, graduating in 2012. Thank you for joining, Elizabeth. Joining us from Columbia Law School admissions is Christina Ross. Christina is a double alumnus of Columbia, graduating from Barnard College and Columbia Law School. For the last 7 years, Christina has worked at the university's law school admissions department. Thank you, Christina, for joining us tonight. Scott Stimler is a graduate of Yeshiva College in 2021. He's currently in the process of applying to law school. Thank you, Scott, for joining us as part of your gap year. Josh Teller is a Juris Doctor candidate at Cardozo and is a 2017 Sim School of Business graduate. Thank you for joining us, Josh, as well. We really do appreciate it. And finally, Elliot Werner is a Juris Doctor candidate at Columbia Law School and a 2019 graduate of Yeshiva College. Thank you for joining us, Elliot. Okay, so to begin our questions tonight, we're going to start with our admissions advisors, Elizabeth and Christina, to discuss the admissions process. So with that said, I'm going to change the view of our lovely event tonight. I'm going to add you both as part of our spotlight here so that everyone can see us. Let's start off with an easy question. What is one thing that is setting up as different this law school cycle than in previous ones? Elizabeth, why don't you go first?
Every year is so different. I think that it always kind of takes us by surprise, frankly. Last year was a blockbuster year for all law schools across the country, frankly. We saw kind of just unexpected astronomical application volumes and application quality as well, which was frankly very challenging. I know it was challenging for us at Brooklyn Law School. There were so many candidates that we wanted to admit that we normally would, but just because the overall pool was so much greater and so much stronger, really made our jobs a lot harder. And I'm sure, Christina, you had the same issue. It was just really challenging for everybody, and obviously for applicants as well, to be put in that position. So this year we're kind of seeing what's going to happen. Application volumes likely will not kind of continue to increase at the rate that they did last year. We're looking actually, with respect to Brooklyn Law School, we're expecting to see kind of a big rush earlier on in the cycle, frankly. That's kind of just what we're expecting by looking at kind of LSAT registration and different types of metrics than we did in prior years. So big rush earlier on, and then we're still trying to see if at this rate, for us, it's relatively early in our cycle, actually. I know that, for example, Columbia, and Christina, you can speak to this, you guys have a strict cutoff in December, whereas we continue to, correct me if I'm wrong, we continue to accept applications through, the spring and even summer, depending on how we fill up. So we're going to see at this point kind of what we're expecting. But as I said, so far, we are expecting a much stronger rush earlier on in the cycle so far.
Okay, Christina, please.
I think I mostly agree with everything Elizabeth said. Last year definitely was a case of all of us frogs realizing the water was getting hot fast. So it was a very surprising year, and it was challenging. I think this year, so far, nothing is raising any alarms or making us think it's going to be all that different than it's generally been, except for the fact that it does appear that the high volume, at least the preliminary numbers, are showing it's holding, not increasing. I don't even know that it could increase, but based on LSAT registrations and things like that, it seems like we are aiming for, or the system overall is bound to receive roughly, or could receive comparable level of the high volume of applications. So, and I will agree too, it is for us too quite early in the cycle. We open the admissions, or we start accepting applications on September 1st. We do rolling admissions, but we accept applications all the way through February 15th. In some instances, if people petition and have a reason, perhaps they want to sit for a later LSAT, we might consider the application. So it's still very early in the cycle. Although I say it's rolling admissions, nobody should be panicking now. If you haven't, gotten your application in, if you still got another month or two to go, you're absolutely fine. So take a deep breath.
Yes, that's a very good point. To all of the students here, while rolling admissions is generally a part of the law school process, if you are working on your applications, and as long as we're making forward progress, you're in a good place. So no reason to really worry about that at this time. Okay, so let's talk about what makes a good application. What are the hallmarks in a good application? Christina, why don't you go first on this one?
Well, first I would want to say it's definitely not, at least from our perspective, there's no intention to make it something of a gotcha process. We're not looking for people to see if they've made any mistakes or screwed up in any way. But that being said, I think it's always going to help your case if it's pretty clear that you took a look at the instructions, that you are being careful to focus on what any given law school asked of you in the application. We understand that most people are applying to not just one school, they're applying to quite a large number of schools, and we have no problem with you basically recycling your application materials for each of those schools. But where there are instances where any given school might have a particular request or guideline, it's always going to help you if you heed that guideline. Our application is pretty loose, it's pretty unstructured, but that's not always the case. But we do have a few instructions. It would be nice if they're followed. Similarly, I think what also is good is if the application reflects that there was some considered thought into the different law schools that you are selecting, and there should be some ability for all of us reading your application to discern not only why you are applying to law school, but why you are applying to, in our case, Columbia. So it's helpful when you can convey what we hope is genuine interest and not just that tendency to open up the Bible known as U.S. News and World and take a look at the rankings and go from there, because most law schools are much more than their rankings. And it's going to be better for you too if you're being a little more, using a little more discretion than that when you are discernment than that when you choose a law school.
Christina, completely agree with you. The rankings, while are a piece of this, shouldn't be the Bible, as you mentioned. Elizabeth, what makes a good application in your mind?
Just to add to what Christina said, when I think what makes an application stand out, it's not necessarily somebody that can show that they're, the smartest or the best at something. It's an application that where I walk away thinking that, I have a really good sense of who that person is. And, where typically I'll maybe look at let's say I look at transcripts first and I get a sense of this person's academic journey. And then I'll take a look at the resume and I get a sense of the person's, interests, what they do outside of school, what they do with their time, with their summers. Then I'll read a personal statement that kind of really ties it all together and echoes the academic journey I saw, as well as, the interests as kind of shown in the resume. And then I'll read the letters of recommendation and the professors tell me all those same things about the person, and give me some more kind of personal qualities that the person obviously couldn't just say about themselves. So we're really kind of all ties together. And I get a sense that, this is obviously everybody's really unique and has their own stories and experiences and talents that they would bring to any community. But if you can really convey that, and it's very challenging, you have to be creative about how you choose to do that. That really makes an application stand out, I think. It might be kind of vague, but it's kind of the best way I can put it.
Thank you. No, I think that is a good way to sort of answer and give information to our students. Let's talk about some red flags or things to avoid in your submission. What have you seen that maybe you have read before in an application that has made you go, oh, maybe we don't want to take that student? We always want to try to give information on both sides. So Elizabeth, why don't you take this question first?
Sure. And I kind of maybe hinted at it in my last answer, is something that it's just not helpful. It doesn't really tell us anything about you as an applicant. If I call it self-promoting, if in your resume you have a bunch of keywords like, highly motivated, quick learner, great attention to detail. And then in your personal statement, you talk a lot about how good you are at so many things. It's more what we're looking for is for you to show, not tell. I want to hear more about what you're interested in, as I said, not, you trying to impress me. So don't, the best advice I can give is, don't try to impress, just show us who you are. And just some quick tips. Edit. Resume, I see the most typos, weird formatting, 12-point font, Times New Roman, normal margins, no pie charts, no templates from Word, just professional resume. And for personal statement as well as resume, print it out before you edit. You'll see a lot more errors and things you might want to fix if you see it on the written page. And obviously the professionals at your school in so many departments can help you with that as well, I'm sure. But yeah, just some tips.
Yes, students hinted that would be our department. Christina, what are some red flags for you?
I'm mostly just going to echo everything Elizabeth said. I don't think I could say it any better. Likewise, again, attention to detail is a good thing. The self-promotion aspects are not that helpful. I will get to this more. I know coming up, because I'm prescient like this, that there'll be a question about personal statements and the like. Think about what, with everything you're presenting there, think about the impression you're making. You're applying to professional school. You're going to be evaluated on the basis of, our best guess about your abilities as a student, as a future professional, as a member of a class and a community. Are you demonstrating attention to detail? Did you put some care into what you're doing? And related, as I said, to the upcoming question about personal statements, don't miss opportunities. The application is your chance to tell us something about yourself. So make the most of each component. Again, I can't second enough what Elizabeth said about resumes. Make them straightforward. We appreciate that. Don't turn your personal statement into nothing more than your resume into narrative form. Choose a topic that will enable us to make some determinations about you as a prospective student, as a member of the class, as a member of the community. And the same things that'll make you a stronger candidate are the things that will help you avoid making mistakes that have us going, maybe not ready, or didn't put some, it doesn't sound like the interest is there because the effort wasn't made to present well. So do those things. Proofreading is nice. We like that.
Thank you, Christina. So let's move into the question of personal statements. I think that's a great way to segue. We often hear from students that topic selection is the hardest part. What would you say to a student who's struggling here to really find their path in terms of a personal statement? Christina, you mentioned personal statements, so I'm going to go with you first.
Sure. I mean, first of all, there are a lot of ways to write a good personal statement. There are more ways to get it right than there are ways to maybe make it unnecessarily weak. The personal statement is daunting, but look at it as an opportunity to tell us something about yourself that we can't learn from the other components of your application. And again, as I just said, bear in mind what we're trying to determine here. You know, what will you be like as a member of the class and the community? Help us form that picture. But there are so many ways you can do it. There might be some story you want to tell about some comparatively seminal event in your life that's caused you to want to go to law school, or you might have a certain passion and professional interest. So tell us something about that. I think what sometimes makes for weaker personal statements when we get a lot of very, very personal information and information that might truly make us feel for you, but it still leaves us not able to answer the question we have, which is, why does this person want to go to law school? And at the end of the day, we are looking for ways to determine that law school is a well-considered decision. It's one you're ready to make. It's one you're making thoughtfully. And as both Elizabeth and I have said, to get some sense of who you are as a person and, what you'd be offering the community and what you hope to get out of law school. It never hurts to get a little sense of, again, why you might be interested in any particular law school. We're not looking for lots of praise and, Columbia is my favorite law school on earth, followed by the people who then forget to scratch out that they also had originally written that Cornell's the most wonderful law school on earth and whatever else. But something that is giving us a little bit of an indication that you're choosing to apply to any particular school for some precise reasons.
Okay, that was a very good starting point, I think, for this answer. Elizabeth, do you want to join in on personal statements?
Yeah, I'll just add like a small process tip maybe that I like to give, especially when the prompt is so open for schools, like ours that allow you to write about literally anything. If you want to write about why you want to go to law school, as Christina said, great. If you don't, I read an amazing one once about the best way to bake a chocolate chip cookie. It turned out to be a lot more than that, obviously, but so some advice I give is, don't try and tell us everything about yourself in 2 pages double spaced. It's impossible. There are so many facets to everybody. So what I did when I applied to law school, and I think it was helpful, and it's the advice I give when people just can't pick, or, how do you boil yourself down to 2 pages double spaced? I actually wrote a few different essays. I think it was 4, and they were all about completely different things, different events in my life, or, one was specifically about why I want to go to law school. And I sent them around to people that knew me very well. And I just asked them all, which one do you like the best? And they all returned not only the same essay, they all pointed to the same essay, and they all said the same thing. They all said, this one is the most, I forgot what they said, this one represents you best, or it's the most of you. It gives us we'll give the reader the best sense of who you are the way we know you. So that's some advice I like to give. As I said, if you write a few different essays, and at the end of the day, you're going to pick one that, yes, does not sum you up in its entirety, but it can give us as file readers the best kind of sense possible of who you are, how you think, even the way you uniquely turn a phrase, the way you connect ideas, the way you present ideally one cohesive idea. So yeah, that's just some advice practically that I like to give.
Yeah, I would really like to echo that excellent idea of having somebody who knows you well and who you trust to give you some honest feedback, 1 or more people. I think that's absolutely wonderful. And lastly, it has nothing to do with how daunting a topic it may be, but also keep in mind that in addition to being an opportunity to tell us about yourself, it is a sample of your writing in a very writing-driven profession. So you also want to demonstrate that you can put together a cohesive and well-structured and well-written essay. So spend some time too on the formatting and making sure that in the end, you've also, it's not just what you've said, but that you've said it as well as possible.
Great advice. And we here at the Glaubach Center and the academic advising team would be happy to look at your personal statements and provide feedback as part of that process. So please engage with us. This is a two-part question. Many students have asked, is law school for only those who are interested in becoming lawyers? And what kind of career paths are available to those who go through law school? Elizabeth, I'm going to throw this one to you first. What do you usually talk to students who are evaluating this path? How would you advise them when it comes to this?
So it's a somewhat nuanced answer. So what I like to say is you should be able to take out a sheet of paper and a pen, old school, and be able to write down, I want to do X, X career or X, Y, and Z career, and I need a law degree to do it. If you can't articulate that yet, doesn't mean law school is not right for you. It means maybe it's not right for you right now. You have a little more thinking or exploring to do. With that said, there are so many different careers that you can have that do require a law degree that are not technically legal, are not, lawyer positions. My career is a great example of that, actually. So I graduated from Cardozo in 2012. After that, I worked as a prosecutor for 3 years. Obviously requires a law degree. After that, I worked at Ernst & Young in international tax practice. Does not technically require a law degree. In fact, at an accounting firm, you cannot actually function as a lawyer because of certain, laws. But, because I had a legal background, I was able to work, in controversy cases with the IRS. It helped me get the position. It helped me get the salary I got. Likewise, after I left EY, I came to work at Brooklyn Law School. Again, it helps me do the best job I possibly can. It helps me, speak in an educated way to prospective law students. It gives me kind of the ammo I need to do my job. So as I said, it's kind of a nuanced answer, but when you are applying to law school and really thinking about that decision, you should be able to, again, articulate one of those careers or more than one of those careers that I've outlined that really do, require a law degree in some way or another.
Okay, Christina, do you want to jump in and give some thoughts here as well? We would love to hear.
Sure. I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add. I think Elizabeth covered it. It's very true that, there are a lot of things you can do that are not necessarily involved in the practice of law when you have that law degree. There is that cliche about learning to think like a lawyer, but that's a real thing. And it's helpful and transferable to a lot of different professions or vocations. So people go on. And the other interesting thing, or I think is a terrific aspect of a law degree, is there are many professional degrees out there. And if you have that degree, you can do that thing, public policy or public health, business, to name a few. But with a law degree, you can also do those things. So people who have a degree, let's say in public policy, can't also practice law, but people who have a law degree can go on to be involved in public policy or public administration, business. So, think broadly, because odds are the training and education you'll get in law school will make you a credible candidate for any range of jobs, not just law-related jobs.
That's a really good point. As also a lawyer on this panel, I want to jump in and give my own answer to my own question quickly. I'm someone who practiced law for several years in private practice in New Jersey. I decided over those years that I really liked working with people and that I really wanted to really transition from legal practice into sort of like teaching and advising and sort of meeting with people. And as someone who has for the last 8 years worked in sort of academic administration. And as many people here know, because I see a few of my students, I teach ethics and legal environment at SciSims. That has been something that I've used my law school experience to gain. Many of my peers from my class at Syracuse have transitioned out of what is the traditional law into other types of roles because their law school skills have helped them get there. So that is relatively common. Our last question for Christina and Elizabeth tonight, I'm going to let Christina, I'm going to let you start. Any general advice you want to give on the law school admissions process, whether it be about the application or the LSAT or a personal statement, any tidbit that you want to give to sort of get us kicked off on this one.
Yeah, I have been thinking that. I think we've covered a lot of it. I mean, I think it's unfortunately something of an arduous process. You're going to apply to a lot of schools. It takes time and consideration. So I would mostly just say, factor that in, set aside some time. There are components of the application that you can control at this point, or at certain steps along the way. So yes, you want to do the best you can in college. All law schools need a standardized test. I think the best advice I'd have is really approach this. I kind of hate this word, but it works, very intentionally. Think about the timing when applications are due and move backwards, no matter where you are, depending on where you are in this journey, move backwards from when you want to submit, and make sure you've left time to address all the components of the application and to give it, your most thorough and well-considered effort, but no major insights beyond that.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, I already gave kind of my biggest headline I could, which is to really show us who you are and not how impressive you'll be. So the other kind of more practical, I think, piece of advice I would give is try to do the research, and Christina talked about this as well, with respect to which law schools are really right for you on the front end. If you can narrow down, those schools, it will not only make your job when you get all of your acceptances, later in April and you have to make a decision in a week. It's going to make that obviously easier. But as you do the research of thinking which law school is right for you, you're going to be thinking, if you really do all of that now, before you apply and as you're applying, it's going to really help you think about what you're actually interested in and what programs you want. It's going to make you think more about it than you otherwise would have. And it's going to help you think, what community do I want to be a part of? It's going to make you more kind of educated in a way once you start law school, and not to mention obviously making the whole process easier later on in April as well.
I'll add one thing I belatedly considered. A lot of people ask me when we do more one-on-one type sessions, how can I make my application really stand out or really pop and, really grab an admissions officer? And I really mean this, and I feel fairly comfortable saying I think this is probably true at most, if not all schools. Take that pressure off yourself. You don't have to do that. We are not expecting every single applicant to submit something that just blows our mind and we've never encountered it before. It is fine to simply put together, again, a carefully prepared and well-considered and well-written application package. Don't feel like if you have not found a way to somehow distinguish yourself from all other applicants, all is lost. It's not even close to that. In fact, the opposite tends to be true more often than not. When we encounter an application that really stands out, it's usually not for very good reasons. So, think about this. We definitely don't want to see any, videos of you in Gold Lame bathing suits, no matter how well that worked out for Elle, what's her name, in Legally Blonde. So.
Yes, do not pull an Elle Woods. With that said, we had one quick question. Why might you require a candidate to come in and do an interview? Although I know rare in the law school process. Christina, do you want to jump on that one?
Yeah, we have an interview program, and in an ideal world, there would be time and resources to talk to all of our applicants and give them a chance to do a one-on-one and face-to-face with us. There is no way that that's possible. So people read a lot into if they do receive an interview application. So I will say up front, it is never a bad thing to be invited to interview. If we've read your application, and we have no interest in you, we are not going to waste, so to speak, one of those interview slots. But the reasons to invite people to interview can be extremely mundane and pedestrian. We're trying to meet as many people as we can. Sometimes there are weeks where invitations go out because everyone's on board and have time and we can talk to slews of people. Once in a while, we select people because something about their application raised a question and we thought, well, you know what, it's just easier to ask them. So we'll set up a short meeting. But our interviews are not designed to be make or break grillings. They really are a chance for you to meet us a little bit, more intimately, and for us to talk to you. Again, if you are invited to interview, it's never a bad thing. But I also want to emphasize we admit far more people without an interview than with one. So not being invited to interview is not some sign that you are doomed at all. That's just not at all the case. So just, take it for what it is, a chance to have a meeting. Welcome it if you're invited, but don't read anything adverse or negative if you're not invited.
Elizabeth, any extra thoughts on that?
Every school is different. We actually almost never interview people. And that's just kind of our process. We prefer to rely on kind of the documentary evidence. So some people do ask for interviews to, explain something. And we really say, try to let your documents speak for you. That's really part of the challenge for us. So it's very different. Every school is different. So it's a good question to ask any school that you're interested in, I think.
Okay, Christina and Elizabeth, thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. This was a pleasure, and I hope our students got some great information out of this. I want to move next to our, excuse me. I want to move next to our students, our former students and alumni, Elliot, Scott, and Josh, who I am quickly adding to the spotlight now so that we can have them join me here and we can have a good conversation about the law school process and maybe a little bit about what law school is like. So I'm going to start us off with an interesting question. And I know you, Scott, you're in the process of applying to law school, and Elliot and Josh, you are currently in law school. So let's talk about how did you go about selecting your recommendations? How did you go about asking? And how much information did you provide to those who you selected? Why don't we start with Josh, please?
Sure. So for me, it was pretty easy how I chose. I made sure to choose people that knew me personally on an academic level and professional level. I went with 2 of my teachers from YU that I felt knew me very well. I took multiple classes with them. And then I also chose someone who knew me from a professional standpoint. So whether that was someone from an internship of yours, a supervisor, someone that knows you outside the classroom that can vouch for other skills that you would need for law school. And then in terms of asking those people, I emailed all of them and I gave them just a short little update of my life. I was an accounting major in YU. So for the 2 professors that I emailed, they were also accountants. So I told them I got my CPA just to give them a little update because I worked after YU. I went to work at PwC for a couple of years. So just to remind them a little bit of who I was. And then actually, it's funny, one of the teachers that I asked to write me a letter of recommendation, they actually emailed me the year prior to write them a letter of recommendation because they were applying for tenure at YU. So that one was easier, just felt like a little, hey, I wrote your letter. Can you write my letter? But just people that really know who you are and can vouch for the kind of person that you are.
Thank you, Josh. Elliot, let's go to you next.
Sure. So I asked for recommendations from professors that I had the closest relationship with. I would highly recommend that students try to cultivate or maintain relationships with professors at YU. I would also recommend asking professors soon after taking their class rather than waiting for when you graduate so that the impression that you left on them is still relatively fresh. And in terms of how I went about asking, I just sent them an email. Professors are used to being asked by students attending graduate schools for letters of recommendation. And so they're very familiar with the process. And with respect to context or any other information I provided, it really varied by the professor. Some professors asked me for the list of classes that I took with them. Others asked me for the grades that I received in their classes. Still others asked me for a resume or anything I might have been up to. Yeah.
Thank you, Elliot. And Scott, tell us, you're in the process of asking for those recommendations. Talk to us about that a little bit.
So I went about going to pick the people to write my letters, more of who I respected a lot. So it wasn't just how they knew me on an academic level or personal level, but it was also about how much I trusted them with writing a letter and how much I really did respect their opinion on what they thought about me. I'd probably second what Elliot said. I either sent them a letter or I just asked them face to face. I know it can be quite intimidating but it's just a simple question, and most professors, I'm sure everybody is more than happy to write, any of their students a letter.
That's perfect. Thank you. That's, I think, a good start to our panel tonight. Let's talk about the personal statement. What was your process for writing it? How did you go about it? Elliot, why don't you start us off for this one?
Sure. So tracking with a lot of what the previous panelists had mentioned, I think it's very important to have another pair of eyes. So to work with someone, it could be a pre-law advisor at YU, it could be a consultant, it could be someone that you trust that has good judgment, preferably maybe even someone that knows you. And maybe just brainstorm impactful moments in your life, things that drive you, particularly if they relate to your interest in becoming a lawyer or going to law school. I'd also say it's never too early to start thinking about the personal statement. It can be a very long process, even writing it. And I found that, I could never perfect it enough. And so you definitely, want to start the sooner the better. And with respect to what I think the most challenging part of writing a personal statement, I think it was just getting pen on paper and putting something down. That's really the key to it. You want to write a draft. It's probably not going to be good the first time around, but it'll go a long way towards your final copy. And I'll also add that there are plenty of resources online to get a better idea of what constitutes, or the many ways you can take a good personal statement. I know 7Sage has blog posts on personal statements, Spivey, Reddit as well, although with Reddit, you always have to take it with a grain of salt.
Yes, very true. Josh, why don't you go next?
Yeah, so the number one advice I will give is to try your best to be different, because in a good way, because majority of people are going to take their resume and just spit it out on paper and just list what they're great at. This is an opportunity to really showcase your personality and reflect on experiences that led you to apply to law school, whether that was an instant moment or something you learned that made you want to become a lawyer. And then as well, add in your strengths that aren't on your resume, some things that you really want to showcase that aren't written down in other documents that you are giving. Christina, I believe she mentioned that you're going to be writing a lot of personal statements, and people that read these know when you're kind of just writing generic things. You want to write something very specific to the school you're applying to. I just remember from my interview process when I was applying for jobs and other things, I remember going onto that company's website and finding a line from that website that I can really show that I took the time to research that firm. And you can do that with law schools. And I do that as well. Find something on the resume that really will stand out to show that you took the time to research them. Because yeah, everyone knows the numbers. Everyone wants to apply to great law schools, but why do you really want to go to that school? Prove that you took the time to do the research.
Thank you, Josh. All right, Scott, we got a big question for you. You're currently in your gap year. You're working on your applications as we speak. How's the process going? How's the personal statement going? Tell us how you're doing.
So I haven't taken the LSAT yet. So at the moment, I'm sort of getting, sort of acclimated to the application process, recognizing what I need to do, what needs to be done. Thankfully, I've gotten all my letters done. But, when taking a gap year, you do have lots of time. And I guess it's a curse and a blessing where, you look at your personal statement every now and then and, with fresh eyes, you let it marinate and you see what's missing, what's wrong. And you're constantly correcting or maybe rethinking things. But all in all, the application process is a lot simpler than I expected. I expected it to be quite complicated and quite intimidating, but it's pretty straightforward.
Thank you, Scott. Much appreciated. Let's talk about the LSAT exam, because it's a good time. How'd you go about studying? How'd you go about getting ready? How many times did you take it? Maybe if you took it more than once. Let's talk a little bit about that. Scott, how's the process going of sort of getting ready to take the LSAT?
So it's a lot of work. It's not a walk in the park, and obviously depending on which sort of law school you want to go to, people have different sort of targets as to what type of school they want. So all I can really suggest for any student who's either, still studying for the LSAT or who's thinking about studying for the LSAT is really find a target for yourself and just don't give up. Like, it doesn't matter how high or how low, just get to your target and just work at it and just don't stop.
Thank you, Scott. All right, Elliot, why don't you take this one next?
Yeah, sure. So I think I might be a case study that shows that there's no one right way to study for the LSAT. I know people that did very well that took a course, and I know people that did very well that studied solo. And the people that studied solo all used different materials. For myself, I initially did a course, was planning on taking the LSAT soon after, had to put a hiatus on my studying for personal reasons, and then resumed studying solo a year later. And so I don't think there's one rule of thumb. I think the key though is whichever method you pursue, it's important to focus on your weaknesses on the test and not just what's going well. And the sections and the practice tests that you take, it's important to really hone in on the things that you're struggling on and make your weaknesses, at the very least, not your weaknesses, if not your strengths. I'd also maybe give some morale suggestions, which is don't be discouraged, both when it comes to studying for the test as well as test day itself. With respect to studying, it's a grind for some people. For me, it was certainly a grind. But this test is really important. It impacts, potentially your career and, a big chunk of the rest of your life. And so you want to make sure that whatever score you come away with is a score that you're happy with and that you think tracks with your capabilities. And with test day, don't get discouraged if you don't get the score that you were anticipating or that you were practicing at. I didn't get the score that I wanted initially, and you're able to retake the test. As far as I'm concerned, almost every school only looks at your top LSAT score. And if you have to, for whatever reason, do a gap year, such as in my case, because you ended up taking the LSAT later than anticipated, that might end up being a blessing. I know for me it was. For one, schools tend to like students that take time off as opposed to KJDs. And you also might do something very interesting. During my gap year, I worked for an NGO in Geneva, at least until COVID hit. And that was one of the most interesting experiences of my life. So don't stress out too much, just work hard and things will work out.
Thank you, Elliot. I think that's a really good point. If you do have to take a little extra time for either study or if you end up taking the exam late, that gap year can be incredibly valuable to you. Josh, how was the LSAT experience for you? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think Ellie said that perfectly. You have to not worry about what everyone else is doing. No one knows you better than you. So whether you want to take a course, whether you want to study solo, you have to do what's best for you. Personally, for me, I was working. I didn't have the luxury of really doing a course. I know Fish does an amazing in-person class. I don't know now with COVID, but I personally bought books online. I studied every morning for like 2 months from 6 to 8 a.m., took the test, and that was my path. But you have to do what's best for you. Block out the outside noise. For me, I've done a lot of standardized testing in the past. And my biggest advice is don't talk to other people about it, because the outside noise is only going to distract you. Kind of get into your own bubble and just grind and focus every single day on what your goal is. And don't talk about it. Just put your head down and do what you have to do to get the work done.
Much appreciated. Okay, let's go. This is my last set question of the night. Josh and Elliot, law school has a reputation for being an extremely tough course of study. It definitely was difficult as someone who lived through it, although many, many years ago now. It was definitely a challenge almost every day in the preparation, in the time needed. It became 10 plus hours a day every day for a course of about 2 years. Josh, Elliot, how's it going? Talk to the students a little bit about what you've experienced so far. Josh, why don't you go first with this one?
Sure. So I think the biggest thing to do is to try to adapt quickly. Law school is so different than undergrad. I believe just one law school class in terms of material is like 5 undergrad classes combined. And I think that is where all the time, as Joshua was saying, that you're just not used to that much material and you need to spit it back out. Because in undergrad, you'll have readings, and let's be honest, how often are you really paying attention to the readings? Because your teachers, they're not calling on you to answer questions. But in law school, the one accurate thing about that Elle Woods movie, Legally Blonde, and first day of law school, the Dean of Cardozo referenced something from that movie and everyone laughed, and I didn't laugh because I didn't watch the movie, so I had to go back to watch Legally Blonde. But the cold calling scene in Legally Blonde is accurate. In my torts class, day one of law school, the torts professor walked in and he said, "Hi, everyone, welcome to torts. Mr. Johnson, what is torts?" Off the bat. That would never happen in an undergrad class. And that really has been the entire path, especially first year. So just adjusting to the fast paced, a little stressful, but you will get used to it. And once you get used to it, you really do cruise through the rest. They say first year is the hardest by far. I personally don't think it's that first year is harder. It's just you're not used to it. And what's so important is to find a friends group and surround yourself with those people. I got lucky and I found a group of friends really early on, and that's kind of your support system for classes to share notes, because law school, it's unfortunate. It has this competitive mentality to it that everyone needs to compete. But if you find that group of friends that can help build each other up, it'll make the process so much easier and the transition a lot smoother. It also depends really, I think YU students are super benefited in this realm because we had that dual curriculum, whereas a lot of students from other schools are coming into law school just having taken like 2 classes a day for 2 hours. Most of us, I know my experience at YU, I started class at 9 a.m. Some days I didn't end till 8 p.m. And you probably hear all the time, it'll help you in life, it'll help you later in life doing dual curriculum. It 100% helps you in law school.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Elliot, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. I can't deny that law school, at the very least initially, is a different beast. It really is tough. You hear going into law school about how challenging 1L is and how much work it requires, and that's not exaggerated. I found last year to be especially challenging doing it remotely, actually from another country, from home in Canada. But this year has been wonderful. I'm really enjoying meeting my students and sitting in classes. And it's also been a lot less of a stressful year. And so for all those that might be worried about 1L and how challenging and stressful it might be, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. With respect to keys to success, and I don't think any of the students here should be worrying about these things yet, but things like outlining and practice tests and attending office hours are all very important. And perhaps just as importantly, self-care. Josh mentioned it's important to have friends that you can have as an outlet and that you can go through the process with. And I think it's also important to try to eat well and sleep well and have whatever outlets that you need to recharge. I think that's very important. And also to reiterate what Josh had mentioned, I think YU's dual curricula certainly prepared me for some of the long days in law school.
Absolutely, I think they do. We're going to leave it open for student questions for just a minute to see if we have any, although we are quickly running out of the hour time window that I did a lot to this. But I do think everything that you gentlemen have said about the applying to law school and the process of going through 1L year, I think by 2L year, things have calmed down considerably. You've gotten into sort of the groove and understanding. The course material actually can get a little bit more difficult as you go through because it's a little more specialized. But the process and the amount of it sometimes will come down a little bit. I don't see any student questions in our chat box here tonight. So with that said, I'm just going to wrap our event a little bit early. And I really do want to thank Elliot and Josh, and we wish you the best of luck in completing your law school journey, and hopefully we'll have good results at the bar exam in the future. The next test that you will be getting ready for. Scott, best of luck with the application process. We all look forward to finding out where you end up next fall. And we really do appreciate it. As Elliot said, you feel free to reach out, email, LinkedIn. We would encourage you to reach out to our student population. For everyone else who joined us tonight, all of our participants, I thank you so much for attending. Christina and Elizabeth, I really do appreciate you joining us as well. For all of us here at the Shevard Claubeck Center, we look forward to seeing you in our offices or an event in the future. And this lovely webinar can be found on our YouTube channel. I will speak to you all soon and have a very good night.